Edgar Allan Poe presents a treasure hunt mystery. I discuss this and more on today's episode. Welcome back to Around the Weird, a booktube channel where I talk about all the unusual and out of the ordinary literature that I've found in my travels. Today it is Short Story Tuesday, so I wanted to talk about an interesting short story that I read. The short story is all about gold. I am referring to Edgar Allan Poe, I'm referring to The Gold Bug by Edgar Allan Poe, which was published in 1843 in the Philadelphia Dollar newspaper. I've talked about Edgar Allan Poe on this channel before, so I don't need to go into great detail. But for those who don't know, which I'm finding it hard to believe there are some people who don't know who Poe is, but for those who don't know, he was a white American writer who lived in the 1800s. Very sad kind of guy, down on his luck, but he wrote The Raven, he wrote The Telltale Heart, he wrote a number of short stories and at least one book and a lot of poetry. Won a bit of notoriety for his work after his death. Unfortunately, he didn't get really recognized in his life. What's interesting is that this short story is published in the Philadelphia Dollar newspaper in an effort to win a prize, which Poe did in fact win. But he was originally going to publish it into a friend's magazine, Graham's magazine, which after he found out about the Dollar newspaper writing contest, he was like, actually, I'm going to publish it here, and I won't give you back the money that you gave me for this story. Instead, I'll write a bunch of reviews for you, which is a good hustle if you can get away with it. But without further ado, let's talk about The Gold Bug. I will do a summary, a little bit of analysis, and we will move on from there. So The Gold Bug focuses on an unnamed narrator who is meeting with a friend of his called William Legrand. William Legrand came from a very prestigious family with quite a bit of money, but they've since fallen on hard times, and William Legrand just lives on the coast of South Carolina or something like that. He also lives with a manumitted former slave named Jupiter, who is depicted as not very bright. But Jupiter helps him as they go out and do conservation, or they're looking around for animals in scientific discovery and things like that. When the narrator meets with Legrand tells him about a weird bug that he found that has a little bit of gold on it. The narrator notes that the bug looks very strange on the drawing that he has from Legrand, noting it looks like it has a death's head or something like that. And Legrand quickly takes the drawing away and begins acting very strangely, so the narrator leaves at that point. And then the narrator comes back a short while later. Jupiter is saying that that Legrand is behaving very peculiarly, but nothing's wrong with him or anything like that. However, when he meets with Legrand says that he believes that this beetle can restore his family's fortune, which it seems unsettling to the narrator. And so they go off on an adventure to the mainland and head into a sort of swampy area. And they engage in a number of weird steps that they have to follow very specifically. And when Jupiter gets one of those steps wrong, Legrand is very unhappy and they have to go through it again. However, the entire process results in them finding very valuable treasure with lots of money. And when they get back to their sort of sleeping quarters for the day, they have a conversation where Legrand explains that the drawing that he had made was made on parchment paper that they found at the in the original area, and it was when it was exposed to heat, it revealed a death's head with a cryptogram on it, which is what the narrator had originally seen instead of the actual image of the beetle, and so. Legrand realized that this was a cryptogram, and so he set about to depicting it, which told him to follow those steps. And he reveals that this was probably the treasure of Captain Kidd, who then proceeded to kill all the people who helped bury it so that nobody would come back for it. And that's really the end of the story there. In terms of analysis, there is a little bit worth talking about with the gold bug. One of the themes that Poe talks about here is a usual theme that he writes about, and that is obsession. The narrator initially worries about Legrand because he's become fixated on this gold bug or gold in general. He specifically says that he wants to restore his family's fortune, which the narrator doesn't believe is possible, and it sort of causes him to worry, like something's not right, and I think he even insists that the Legrand must be going through some sort of fever-induced sort of hysteria, which the Legrand insists that he's not doing, or he hasn't going through that, but he does have a single-minded pursuit of all of this and isn't explaining any of it to the narrator, so it's understandable why the narrator would be worried about all of this. And so, this is different than most Poe stories because, there's a reward at the end. There's a reward for being obsessed in this kind of way, and it's different from other Poe stories in that there's really no death unless you count what happened with Captain Kidd, who was executed for his pursuit of treasure, and he also killed the other people who helped bury the treasure. Which shows more obsession with money and jewels and valuables. So that kind of obsession is there in the story, but for the characters of this story, they are rewarded for their obsession and for being unusual at times in that way. Poe is also writing a treasure hunt mystery for his readers. He leads the readers into a mysterious adventure with mysterious bugs and cryptograms, which up until now, around this time, readers were being presented these ideas. These were sort of introduced into reading as a way to sort of enthrall readers and give them mysteries and titillate them in that way. You also see pirate jewels. So the characters are going on a little bit of adventure in this story. However, I do think overall this is a poorly written pirate story. It's one of the first ones, so of course they're kind of fine-tuning the process. It's not as elaborate as Treasure Island or anything like that, but Poe is doing a lot of telling rather than showing. He doesn't, sort of let any of this happen naturally. It's just at the end, the Legrand just tells the narrator everything that he found and whatnot, and it's kind of interesting, but it also doesn't feel as interesting as opposed to if you had discovered it within the story itself. It's just him telling you what it's all about. It does remind me in a lot of ways of Murder in the Rue Morgue, which is another mystery story that Poe had written, where the way the story is described and whatnot, it doesn't feel like the readers are sort of discovering the mystery. It just feels like Poe is just talking at you, and it kind of sinks the story, in my opinion. Now, the other thing I'll note is that the character of Jupiter in this story, who is a former slave, the depiction of him is kind of racist in a lot of ways. He's depicted as not as smart as the white characters in this story, and his dialogue is all written in stereotypical black dialect for the time. But it's interesting because none of the white characters are being written in a way that captures their speaking style. It's only the black character in the story. And I just find it interesting because Poe isn't usually racist in his stories, but he does mostly write about white people, so you wouldn't have many opportunities to see it. And I will note in the narrative of Arthur Gordon, Pym of Nantucket, there is a little bit of racism there as well. So maybe some of that just kind of seeping below the surface, and we haven't come to know Poe as a racist because he's mostly avoided talking about that thing. And I know you could say it's very much of its time, but it's worth critiquing in a modern day, because there were people who did know better at the time, and just because Poe existed in that time, that's not an excuse for writing characters like this. So definitely worth pointing out, I would say. Anyway, those are my thoughts on The Gold Bug by Edgar Allan Poe. Not a very good short story, unfortunately. I think there's a reason that nobody really talks about The Gold Bug. This is the first time I've really encountered it. And there are plenty of other really good Edgar Allan Poe stories out there that highlight similar ideas, but this is not one that I think we should be proclaiming when we talk about Edgar Allan Poe. It's just not very good. If you think differently, or you just want to say something about my review here, let me know in the comments below. I would love to hear from you. Otherwise, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so that other people can find out about this short story or this writer if they don't already know, which most people might already know about Edgar Allan Poe. And until then, I wish you the best of luck in your weird and pirate adventure travels. Farewell.